The COVID-19 pandemic is having profound impacts on our personal lives in many ways. For students who enrolled in the face-to-face classes in spring 2020 semester term, they had to transition their learning activities into the emergency remote learning environment on the fly. During the tough transition, the level of students' frustration and anxiety was reported very high. The situation was much worse for students who have existing mental health conditions. 2 weeks ago in an IDN webinar, Ms. Ritzy Ettinger, clinical case manager in the Counseling and Wellness Center at the University of Florida, presented a very well-received session on Introduction to Students' Mental Health Needs. The webinar recording and handouts can be viewed and accessed on the IDN website. I will share the link to the IDN website in chat in a minute. So we understand that raising the awareness of the students' well-being and mental health needs and providing them with timely support is not the job only for the licensed counselors and the healthcare professionals. It requires the effort from every member of the educational system. We need to keep educating ourselves on the student mental health needs, as well as strategies and resources for supporting them through the cross-discipline and cross-curriculum design and collaboration. So with that, I'm handing the webinar over to Ms. Ritzy Ettinger. So Ritzy, please.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad that all of you are here. You're taking the time to learn, which means you are definitely part of the solution to this very overwhelming situation that we have with the growing numbers of students experiencing mental health distress. So I have a lot to cover. I sometimes tend to speak really fast. I will try not to, but I promise to answer your questions in the end. And you can also email me. So for those of you that were not here last time, I chose Seeing Green because green May and is the month that we promote mental health awareness, and green is the color. Next slide. And during this presentation, you will be able to look at different strategies for addressing students who are experiencing mental health distress. You'll be able to identify specific signs of distress. Last time we did some general ones. Today we'll be more specific. You will also hopefully identify resources that you can receive, more training, and then to also create a community of support for online learners. As Tom said, it is not incumbent, it's not the responsibility of only counselors. It is the responsibility of all of us that work in higher education to support students and to collaborate with one another. Hopefully you'll be able to, if we don't have time, this is a lot, but to create a small syllabus statement, if you are a professor, or if not, to create some statement for either your website or your email or anything that you could put available and visible to students that says that's promoting mental health. The identifying the COVID impact, we did that last time. We may not get to that as much, but I'm going to just try to touch base a little bit and remind everybody that it has had a much bigger impact on this generation that are attending college than we thought before. If anything I say or discuss with you triggers you or evokes a painful memory or reaction, and you feel that you're not able to stay, please, I welcome you to leave or take a break. No questions asked. It'll be fine. So thank you, Tom. And next slide. So signs of distress for academics. Some of you I've noticed are work in the academic advisement. And so maybe you are an advisor, maybe you are a chair, maybe you are a curriculum designer or a professor. But these are the quick list that I came up with. If you have students that are experiencing distress, poor work, dropping grades, difficulty concentrating, a lot of the time students will say, I'm having a really difficult time concentrating. And difficulty concentrating can be a manifestation of other things other than ADHD. It could be irregular sleep patterns. It could be depression. It could be anxiety. So sleep is really, it impacts students a lot. So when they're saying difficulty concentrating, that could mean a myriad of things. Difficulty working in teams, maybe they're just not feeling comfortable. And again, that could be because of their personal background, their cultural makeup, or just because they are experiencing a mental health distress, or academically. Increased difficulty completing assignments, absences, if all of a sudden they start becoming absent. Um, Increased anxiety around exams or deadlines, if they express verbally or to others or to you, I'm becoming extremely worried when it comes to having able to sleep, and that's going to impact their academics. And then repeat requests for special consideration. Can I have more time? I wasn't able to do this today. I wasn't able to finish it. I wasn't able to focus. Look for those signs for academics. That a lot of time mental health will manifest itself first through some of these signs, and you can be the first to see it, especially if you're an academic advisor or a professor. Next. Changes in behavior, we talked a little bit about this last time, but personal hygiene, if you have a Zoom class and you can see the student, if their appearance has obviously changed, um, and um, changes in eating pattern, if they report eating differently, or if they say, or if they have significant weight loss, sleep pattern, which I talked about in class, maybe sleep, maybe when you speak to them, you had a scheduled conference call and they sound very lethargic, very sleepy. Um, Frustration, agitation, and that it's visible to you. Inappropriate responses or disjointed thoughts, or intense, dramatic, or volatile emotions that are not warranted for the situation. So those might be things in behavior that you can see if you're having a Zoom class, but you can also see sometimes in the interaction that the student may be having online with other students. Next slide. And additional changes, loss of interest, if they talk about loss of interest in activities that were previously pleasurable to them. Physical harm, if you see visible bruises or cutting, and we'll talk more about that later for self-injury behavior. But verbal or written references to distress, maybe they discuss it. We had a student who discussed something online about the thoughts of harming themselves, and then that person reported it to the dean of students. That would obviously be very obvious, but again, that this was an online student, and the student was supported. Increase in disorganization, if you can go back, yeah, and always feeling pressured and using certain social media communication. I've put the link for the JED Foundation, has a great PDF that you can share with students if they see signs of distress in other students. This is a great website, and I'll share more about that later. Next slide. And interpersonal signs, difficulty getting along with others in the class, isolation, if they talk about, I haven't seen anybody, not due to COVID, in weeks, I haven't talked to anybody. I had a student prior to COVID who had not left his room in 3 weeks. And because of, the food being able to be ordered, really didn't see the need and hadn't gone to class in 3 weeks as well. So, and two of the classes were online, but hadn't seen a human being other than his face in the mirror for 3 weeks. So, extreme defensiveness, short temper if you're engaging with them, and we'll talk more about what to do later, but not only with you, a possible student or a staff member at the university or college. Next slide. And then physical health, if they're expressing or talking about, I have a headache, I've been having headaches, a lot of the symptoms, a lot of the mental health sometimes manifests itself through, the body. If they're constantly expressing, then the immune system also gets impacted. So if they're frequently sick, or sometimes some of the mental health can manifests itself through pain, muscle ache, fatigue. So those are also things to look for. They may not be biological. They may not be related to a diagnosis that medical doctor, but rather a mental health professional could diagnose. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to share a lot of resources with you today. But the number one thing you can do to help students is prevention. Like, you can actually prevent a lot of what can happen. And you're saying, well, how? And you can do this by connecting, simply by connecting with the students that you're working with. Or if you're designing the curriculum, to promote connection within the curriculum. So if a student is connected to another student, maybe providing an opportunity for an exercise that will allow you to get to know each other. The simple, I took an online class where the professor had us write interesting facts about yourself and then partnered us. And so that gave me a sense of connection, but also with the professor. The professor took the time to really read all our information and really wrote something personal, and it made me feel connected. Next slide. So this is a little more about connection, but all the research shows, K through 20, all the research shows that the more a student is connected with the learner, with the professor or with somebody on campus. It could be the academic advisor. It could be somebody that could be the librarian. It could be somebody that works, in the cafeteria where the student eats every day. It doesn't really matter who it is. If a student is connected to somebody, there's a sense of belonging, because at the end of the day, that's what we all want. As human beings, we require that connectedness. And having that is so important. So in whatever small way, whether it be the curriculum or it be in academic advisement, try to really connect it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to really do that in a genuine, authentic, professional way where you're not necessarily crossing boundaries. Next slide. Okay, so when you have students, and this is where we're getting to that part of how do we address students that are experiencing mental health distress. When you're addressing students and you respond, it is so important to be very intentional in your approach, to be aware that how you react to that student is going to have a direct correlation to where the situation heads. It could mean the situation de-escalates, escalates. Maybe the student will continue because they trust you, seek help. Maybe the student will remain in class. Maybe the student will drop out of the class. Maybe the student will graduate, or the student could possibly drop out and never graduate. So it is really important for you to be intentional when you're engaging students who are experiencing a mental health distress, to be very strategic and very aware. And one of the things that I say is I play scenarios. What if a student said this? What if a student did that? How would I react? It's really important for you to be intentional, and we'll talk about more how that can happen. Next slide. Okay, when you're communicating with students, some of the barriers to communication, and I put the link down there because this is a whole presentation on de-escalation, just in case. But there are barriers. Sometimes, cultural difference, and these are not all the barriers. I just want you to know that I know, but these are the ones that I highlighted because these do come into play. Cultural differences. It could be maybe also a gender difference. If a student is not comfortable due to something that happened in the past because of the professor or the person that's engaging them. Poor listening skills. And this, by the way, you can thank me later, because these are not just for students. These are for your personal relationships. Poor listening skills. I heard someone say, we listen to respond. We're listening to the person to say what we're going to say back rather than, really listening. I was a school counselor for a long time, and I used to always teach the teachers and counselors and students, We listen with our eyes, ears, and heart. 90%, 90+% of the communication um, is done non-verbally. So that could be a challenge for you if you are trying to engage the student, an online student. I would suggest, if possible, that you schedule a Zoom conference, because that way you can see the response that you're getting from the way you're communicating. Maybe the way you're communicating is not coming across in a way that's accepted so readily. So you can certainly, through a Zoom conference, it would be better than just a phone call. However, we're going to talk more a little about your tone later. Sometimes we make assumptions. Oh, maybe you're preoccupied. Maybe you have a meeting after and you're not really listening to what somebody's saying, the student is saying. You're thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to help them? What do I do? Being really in the moment is important. Not becoming defensive. If a student is saying, well, you did this and you did that, at that point, if you start to defend yourself, you're breaking down communication. Blaming, that's happens in all relationships. Um, Blaming is something that should not happen when a student is trying to share their difficult moments with you. And if the student talks about, a hot button, I had a student that was saying things that were really troublesome to me um, recently, and I had to share, this is very difficult for me to hear. I just want you to know that, this is how I'm feeling. And this is not to silence you, but it is having an impact on me. So sometimes students will press our buttons because we're humans. And the language, sometimes the language barrier, what you say may not be how I understand it. Maybe because the student is an international student, or maybe because just we simply use that language differently. That's important to keep in mind. Next slide. Okay, so the first, probably most important thing that I think anybody could do when trying to help another human being is provide empathetic listening. Um, Empathetic listening is you're non-judgmental, right? And that's really hard to do because we are asked to make judgments every day, hundreds, if not thousands of times a week. So to remain very neutral in about the student's situation is difficult. Practice with your loved ones, practice with your coworkers. Let them tell you something and see if you can stay neutral without having an opinion about it. Be present, and that's what I was saying earlier. Interpret what they're really saying. I'm fine. I'm just having a bit of a hard time focusing. What does that really mean? So restate. So what I hear you saying is focusing is really difficult for you. So is that what I heard you say? And if I didn't get it correctly, please feel free to correct me. Make sure that you are providing an opportunity for them to give you that feedback, because if that's not what they're trying to communicate and you're making an assumption, then that's a problem, because that's very simple and it's easy to do. We do it every day because, again, that's the way the human brain works. We want to get into patterns and we think, oh, this is what they're going to say, or this is what they mean. Sometimes the words are not even what they say and we assume. Kind of think of when you're listening to a song and you got the wrong lyrics. Well, that happens in conversations as well. Okay, next. So, empathetic listening continued, validate their emotions. And if somebody said to me, for example, I recently had a really bad car accident, and I'm a first generation. I don't have insurance, and I'm really worried about how my parents are going to pay for it. I've had to pick up extra shifts, or maybe I was a victim of a sexual assault. The response should be, I can see this is really difficult for you. And it sounds like these challenges are in your life are really impacting your classwork. Thank you for coming and sharing, your concern. It took a lot of courage to do that. And I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I admire your courage. I know that it can be difficult to share these moments. And I'm your professor, or I'm your advisor, or, but tell me how I can help you. Tell me how I can help you. And it goes back to your voice, your tone, and your cadence. So I was talking about that phone call earlier. I'm going to say the same statement 3 times, and you're going to hear a completely different message. If someone asked me, could you babysit my kids tonight? I could say, yeah, I'll babysit your kids tonight. They asked me the same question, and I could say, I'll babysit your kids tonight. The same question, I'll say, I'll babysit your kids tonight. You are getting completely 3 different messages, although they are the same exact words. So choosing your tone, your voice remaining neutral, how fast, how slow you speak is your cadence, all of that must be congruent with what you're trying to communicate, which is, I care about you. You are not just a student or a number to me. You are a person. I, I shared this before, last time I had 4 sons, and my standard is this. When a student walks into my office, how would I want somebody to treat them if that was my child? And I pretend that someone that loves them is in that room. Because that's a pretty high standard. And sometimes they don't have somebody that loves them. So you might be the only person that they come to, that they can rely on, that they care for, or that cares for them. So you have to have authenticity when you're communicating with them. It has to really match that message of, I care for you. I want you to succeed. I am here for you. I may not be a counselor, but I can help you in some way. Okay, next. What to avoid? Dismissing what they're shared with you. Maybe it makes you uncomfortable. It's something that's triggering. If it is, you can be honest and say, this is really difficult for me, but I can point you in the right direction. But dismissing what they said is completely invalidating, demoralizing, especially if a student took the courage to share. Silver lining it. Well, at least, I lost my job, or I was hospitalized. I was hospitalized. I was bankrupted, and I lost my job. Well, at least you still have time to finish your classwork. That's not getting down in the well with them. And it goes back to, what I said before, those specific words that you can use. Um, Minimizing, again, it goes to with silver lining. You're not respecting and you're not validating their lived experiences. Preaching, actually, I think you've got that wrong. I think you got to do this. This is really would be helpful. Maybe that would be helpful for you. Maybe that would be helpful for someone you love. Maybe that would be helpful for a coworker. But you don't know their lived experiences. Maybe whatever you're suggesting actually will be more hurtful to that student. And judging, let's say for a student who came and said, yeah, I went to this party and I was raped. Oh, we have to go to the authorities right away. I think that's what you need to do. That's a judgment call. And maybe the student is not ready to go to the authorities. Maybe the student is afraid because well, now, thank goodness that DACA, the students are legal, but maybe before, if the student was not documented, they don't want to go to the authorities. Or maybe they had a really negative experience with the authorities. That could possibly be more traumatizing. So because it's something that you find helpful, keep in mind that it may not be the best. So avoiding that. And then the quid pro quo. If I let you do this, if I let you turn in the assignment, you have to promise me that you're going to do that. And so I think it's really important that you keep in mind that there isn't, I give you this, you do that for me, because the student may not be able to do that. Sometimes they're not able to get out of bed. Sometimes they're not able to feed themselves. I've had students who have had trouble bathing, or brushing their teeth. So when somebody's experiencing these mental health issues, it is really easy for us to be able to judge and say, why can't you just do it? And it's easy. But if you're the person suffering, just to make that phone call or that connection is really, really hard. So next. Okay, Okay, and if you take nothing else from this, the last thing you want to do to tell someone in distress is calm down. Um, I never in the history of man has that worked. Um, just think of the last time you were experiencing a lot of a strong emotion, whether that was anger or sadness or frustration, and somebody turns to you and says, just calm down. No. Okay? That is definitely the last thing you want to do. We want that is uh okay, let's just not do it. Next slide. Okay, if a student is agitated, this is really important. This is what I was talking earlier about. There will be times when a student comes to you and they may be in a state of mind where they're not able to regulate their emotions or they're starting to escalate. Uh, I came here last week and nothing is helping me, and now I'm here again, and you're saying I can't take this class. And at that point, just it's really important to say, I notice you're becoming agitated in a calm, neutral tone. Sometimes you can use humor. It works. I'm very animated. I use humor. It works for most of my students, but there have been students who are like, I don't like joking around. I had a student who told me I smiled too much and he didn't want me to smile. So I was like, okay, I get it. But humor is good. Just remember to be sensitive about what you're, laughing. I usually try to make it very light, something small, something insignificant that has no, uh, that would be very uh, non-hurtful to students. You can also convey the consequences for inappropriate behavior and still remain calm. So, for example, if you're teaching a class in Zoom and you have a student who's interrupting everybody, you can very calmly um, type a message and say, I notice that you're interrupting a lot. If you continue to, I've asked you to stop. If you continue to do that, I will have to mute your mic. That is very neutral. That is not threatening. That is not challenging, because the last thing you want to do is challenge the student. Um, and then be honest when you're answering their questions. But again, neutral, warm tone. And then feedback. You have to know when to give feedback. If a student is really agitated or if a student is in distress, the last thing you want to do is, well, when you came back, it made me feel really uncomfortable. It was difficult to talk to you because I saw and you look very menacing. It's not the time to give them feedback. Think of this in your life with your loved ones, partners, parents, children, coworkers. Think of somebody who's really upset as a shaken soda can. If you open the soda can, are you expecting the soda to stay inside? No. If somebody is in a lot of distress, we cannot expect them to be able to take our feedback because more than likely that's going to be a negative outcome. So it is important that we let the soda can sit in a very intentional, caring way so that then we can have a dialogue. Next. And next, because we're running out of time, I want to make sure I cover these resources. First, I want to tell you I spent hours looking at resources throughout the state. And at first, my goal was I'm going to put a pamphlet for all of them. And then I realized that's impossible. That would take me years. And then it would still be inaccurate because resources change all the time. So we're going to talk about these different resources. First, we're going to discuss resources at your institution. Second, we're going to talk about resources available in the community the student lives in. Then we're going to talk about online resources for students, apps, and then finally the training that I think would be very helpful for all of you. So let's talk about the first one. Next slide. Okay, so what is available in your institution? At some point today after the webinar, hopefully you can take some time to do this. I want you to search for keywords for the institutions that you're working with. Wellness. Everybody doesn't have the same language. So sometimes a college or university will say, Oh, the wellness center. The wellness center is different at some places. It could be where they promote non-smoking, safe sex, uh, time management. That is not the counseling center. So you could look at Miami-Dade, and they have, when you look at wellness or well-being, actually counseling comes up. So mental health, student services, not all institutions use the same language. So I looked at Miami-Dade and it said wellness resources. I looked at UNF and they had student services. When you put student services, my goodness, they had all 26 departments under student services, and they talked about each one, what each one did. And I was like, wow, okay. So USF has the well-being, and I looked at theirs too. So under USF, you have also a list of all the things that are there. But in addition, you can have the DRC, the Disability Resource Center, which is called also again different at different institutions. The counseling center, the food pantry, the health center, and that's misspelled, I see it now, the veteran center, the career, the care team. All of that most of the time falls under the student services. But because each institution doesn't use the same language, I want to encourage you to explore what is available at those institutions so that you could put a link in the syllabus or on your website. Really quickly, services available to you at the university, wellness plan for college for students, what is available to you, however you want to word it, whatever is friendly in your institution. But please research what is available to you at that institution, okay? Next. Hey, counseling centers are a great resource. I mean, they really are. If I went to several, I went to UNF's, USF, FSU, I went to Miami-Dade, I went to Hillsborough, and they to all their websites, and a lot of them have just chock full of information. You can click a lot of the time and say, these are the resources available. One of them, you took a survey to assess if you were experiencing anxiety, and then it gave you some psychoeducational information. And in addition to that, it said this is how you can make an appointment with us. And if you couldn't make an appointment, there was another one that had you can actually go to different websites where they were providing more psychoeducational, or if it was clinical, did you when do you need help? The student also have training videos. Ours, our website, the counseling center, has some videos where you could do relaxation techniques and some imagery. They also have the list of apps that you can download. You can make virtual appointments. So look to see if these institutions have a counseling center, and then take the time to explore to see what is available already and how you can promote that to the students. Okay, next. Okay, the other thing I did, and I did it again. I was trying to compose a large resource, but it is going to take forever. However, you guys can individually look for information in your area. So if you are in Polk County, if you are down in the Keys, what is available to students within your community? I saw that Miami-Dade had in their wellness page the rape treatment center, the domestic violence, and the 311 if somebody's needing job skills or home assistance. I thought, wow, that's great. They already have it there listed. The other one is, you had somebody from Marion County. I looked at Marion County's website, the county, not the college, Central Florida, but the county actually had a free uh, offering to help people with rent. So if you have a student who is experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity, there it is. There's a resource. So the thing that you can actually do is look for resources for the major things that a student might experience. And oh yeah, somebody wrote this. It could be in your campus safety. That's the one I left out because I didn't have enough space. And thank you for bringing that up. There are some of the colleges I looked at had campus safety, and that's where some information was. So thank you for bringing that up. Next. Okay, so online resource for students. Um, they're not all free. Some of them are. However, I put these here, and these are the major ones. The APA has a great help center where you can help yourself. So I put that in there. The JED Foundation, I can stress enough. If your campus is already affiliated with the JED Foundation, know the valuable work that they do. Um, they have actually a lot of resources, not only for students, but also for faculty and staff members. They have 3 webinars right now that are recorded that you can watch for free that helps you to help students who are experiencing mental health distress through COVID. Um, and they have a lot of resources for students as well. They have, I put in there the 1-800-273-TALK. All of you should have that in a syllabus or somewhere on, if you are working with students, that number should be there because it is really important to say, okay, this a number that if you're experiencing a crisis, the new one is 741-741. Students can actually text somebody. The next one I saw I liked is a screener, ulifeline.org, is you can actually take a screener to see where you're at if you're experiencing anxiety, depression, substance use, and then it provides you some psychoeducational stuff. The college telehealth is new, but it's basically for students who are not going to be seen at the counseling center and they want telehealth counseling. It's important to remember that there is a cost associated and that a lot of the online learners can't necessarily afford it. Um, Campus Mind Works is for students with a mental health illness. This University of Michigan does an amazing job. They have a very strong student-led organization that helps other students experiencing mental illness. So if you have a student in campusmind.works.org, they have a lot of resources. And what I noticed, I'm pretty sure, is that they have a checklist, right? So if you just were hospitalized, what do you do? If you have a condition, how do you approach it? What can you say? They have forms that you can pre-filled out so that you can communicate with people. I was so excited when I first saw that a while back. Active Minds is also a great resource for students. Mentalhealth.gov actually has psychoeducational and some really good links, as well as SAMHSA. The Find Treatment, I like it because it tells you where you can actually find treatment: eating disorders, substance use, depression, anxiety. And this was out about a month ago. Landing Google realized that the anxiety and depression, but primarily anxiety, was so high due to COVID that if you go to landinggoogle.com, it is a screener for anxiety. And you take it, it's like 10 questions, and it tells you you should really get help or you're okay. You just might need some relaxation. I don't know. I specifically answered to see what it would say if I was clinically high needs, and it sure did. You should really get some help. Suicide prevention line, again, that's that related to suicide prevention, to the 1-800. It's really important to have that information. And NAMI, they have a lot of information that can help students. And so those are not all. I welcome you to do the research, but what I did is I put all of these in one paper, and one and a half. I emailed it to Tom, so Tom can either share it with you or email it to all of you, but they will all be there, okay? And next slide, running out of time. Oh, so this is the training I was really excited about. You can actually go right now, the Mayo Clinic just started last Monday, a free online first aid for psychology course. But I wasn't, because of the time, I couldn't say, hey, here, go ahead and join. But there are classes. The Red Cross actually offers classes, and they're online. So for psychology first aid, mental health first aid is really good because you can find out where those classes are being offered, and it's really good, especially if you have maybe your whole housing department, or maybe your um, financial aid department. You might have students that are experiencing mental health, at that time, mental health needs. And so it's really good if they have that training. You could actually bring someone and also reach out to your counseling center, because they might have someone that will offer this training to you. I know that we provide it at the University of Florida to other stakeholders. And then Cognito, I brought this up before. Primarily, this is for professors. They have not created one for staff. I mean, for staff. But it gives you an idea of how to respond. And if you go on it, if you go to florida.cognito.com, because the Board of Governors made it mandatory for the training, you can actually log in with your email. Yesterday, they were working on the website, but you can log in to that training with your email, with your university or college email that you already have. And also those webinars that the JED Foundation has, you can go on there and look for them for free if you go to the jedfoundation.com. They're on the top, or they're on the top, and you put staff, faculty, staff, and then you could look at resources they have. It is a great website. The Trevor Project for students, and there is one that I'm going to send right now for students of color, Black students. There is this organization that's trying to connect them to free mental health if they can't afford it, but trying to connect students that are marginalized services, especially our Black student population right now. So I will see if I can get that information and mail it to Tom. That just recently came about, and I want to make sure you guys have that. And then the next slide. Apps. So these are all really good apps. I actually put them on that list. The app, the GOC, is there. By the way, these are all free. The one that looks like a notebook is cognitive behavioral therapy, where you write down your thoughts. The PTSD coach was created by veterans, and that's free. The mind space is the one that teaches you how to meditate and breathe. We'll see one with the arrow rising up. That's for somebody with eating disorders. The other ones are for OCD. So these are just simple apps. Almost every university has apps that they recommend. These are the ones that some of my students have used, but I put there, they also just happen to be on the list of a website I went to, and I'm like, okay, I've heard of these, and I actually have three of them. The Calm app is one of my favorites, and it has just water sounds, and it teaches you how to meditate very slowly and step by step. So the next one, next slide. So the psych.com, if you see at the top there, that's where those 25 best mental health apps, but everybody's different, so it's what do you like. But the one that didn't have I couldn't find a picture of it, was the Wisdo. And the Wisdo is so peer supported. All the research shows how important it is to have peer support of something you've experienced. So if I've experienced mental health, and I've experienced and I know somebody else who has also experienced that, Wisdo is going to connect me to somebody who has experienced the same thing. And for now, it's 6 months free. You can meet individually, you can meet as a group. So that's also there. The other one that I have there is the Nod app. It was created by the Hope Lab specifically for college students who are experiencing loneliness. So those are the two that I didn't have a picture. I tried the Nod app, and I actually like it. But the Wisdo, they did this huge study for college students, and they're doing it. They're giving it to them for free to see if it helps. So I wanted to share those two with you. And next slide. I just wanted to say thank you. I know that was a lot of information and we are almost out of time. Tom, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Do you want to go to Padlet?
Yes, I just posted the link to a Padlet page for everyone to feel free share your learning and the reflections on that page, and then everybody can see that. To add a record, click on the plus icon on bottom right of the screen of the Padlet. Feel free to type that in. Okay, well, thank you very much for participating in this Padlet activity. I'll give you a couple of minutes to feel free to either type your learning reflections, or if you want to share any helpful resources with our colleagues for today, just feel free to chime in. So, wow, thank you very much for participating. Great. So, Ritz, do you have any more comments or
No,
suggestions?
yeah, I'm so moved by the comments and what is being posted, to know that it makes a difference and that it's not just the people in the mental health community that do the work. Because I, I can't tell you the amount of times that it has been other people that have worked with me to save lives, and that it means so much to students. That don't see the brick and mortar buildings, that may not have the opportunity, that may be more marginalized, and to see, I am so inspired. It brings tears to my eyes to see, this positive. It's just so needed and it's so welcomed, and that just made my heart smile. Thank you so much, and I'm humbled by the fact that you came and participated, and I hope we can keep growing and going in this area. So thank you.